Hey. That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
He did what?
Jackpot, baby!
Ice up, son. Ice up. That is blasphemous. You can put it on the board. Yes.
I don't know why, but that one bit from Joe Buck always makes me laugh. That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss. BYU fans last year were probably saying the same thing about me. That was a disgusting act by Mike's Madness. After I came on and said that these new teams that are going to join the Big 12 are not going to be able to have the same success right away as they are right now. Nobody liked that. Nobody. A very select few people were saying, yeah, actually, you're right. You know what you're talking about? Like, I see what you're talking about. Most people were like, you know, angry old man shouts at cloud type of deal. That's the kind of, just for those that, you know, don't really know what I'm talking about, kind of outsiders on this topic, that's how most people were in response to what I had said. Not necessarily basing their you know, whole argument or position or whatever you want to call it on any really solid facts. It was just old man shouts at cloud kind of thing. That was it. And last year I did a few segments on this. I did one segment where I just kind of overall was saying, you know, yeah, the new team's probably not going to do too well. And then I did one on each team, you know. And for those that missed it, last year it was announced that BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati would be joining the Big 12 after the departure of Oklahoma and Texas. This is a thing that's going to happen a few years down the line, not this year. Just to clear that up. So I guess, you know, to the surprise and to, I don't know, people were not ready for it. And I guess I was a little too eager or something. I don't know, but maybe I had too much audacity to say that I didn't think that these teams would be very successful right away. And all of these teams went from playing a few Power 5 teams, not even getting into whether they were good or not, just Power 5 in general, playing a couple of them a season, 6 at the most, in very select few seasons. BYU, once again, this year, ranked in the top 25. Awesome. We'll come back to the whole not playing too many Power 5 teams and whether they're good or not and success. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll circle back to that. So the start of the season, BYU gets off to a good start. You know, they win a game. I'm not exactly sure who they played week 1, but it was a not an eyebrow-raising win. However, they did beat Baylor, a top 15 team at the time. That's a good win. I'm not going to disagree with that. I can't. That's a fact. It was a good win. And so things were starting to look like maybe they were going in the right direction for the old BYU Cougars. All right, maybe we have something. Maybe after all, maybe I was wrong. Maybe after all, I was a little too harsh on the old BYU Cougars. Maybe I was a little idiotic on the whole subject. Maybe I was a little too eager and a little too, maybe I had too much audacity to say, oh, they're going to be so bad, right? So they were getting off to a good start. They beat a very good Baylor team. Week 3, I guess it's week 4 now. The whole week schedule system is so weird for college football to have week 0 now. Like, what does that even mean, week 0? Anyway, point is, next game, on the road, at Oregon, a team who, honestly, they themselves didn't get off to such a great start. They're 25th in the nation. Last team in the top 25 poll. BYU goes on the road to play those Oregon Ducks. In a game, BYU wins that game, right? I'm going to say, hey, BYU fans, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is the turn of the century for BYU football. And they go on the road and did not play well. They go on the road against Oregon, and Yeah, it was not good, we'll say. They lose 41-20 on the road against an Oregon team that I don't think is that great, mind you. Sure, they're top 25, but if you beat Baylor, you should be able to beat Oregon, whether you're at home or on the road. And again, Oregon, not a team that I think is all that great, but that's another conversation for another day. Point is, top 25 team on the road, they lose that game. So BYU, again, coming into that game, they were ranked 12th. And if you want to be considered an elite program and, you want to, be a team that people take seriously and, you want to be a college football playoff contending team and all that and the whole deal, you got to go on the road and win those games against top 25 teams. You have to beat other top 25 teams, which got me thinking. last year I did kind of some research on just overall Power 5 teams, how well they did record-wise, and then top 25, whether top 25 Power 5 or not, just top 25 in general, how they did. And, the winning percentage, I'll pull it up, was, about 50% or less. And, update that with who they played at the end of last year and the teams they played at the beginning of this year. And they're within reach of 500, but they're not at 500. They're not. And the whole deal where they beat Baylor at home, Baylor was not even top 15 at that point. They were top 10. You beat Baylor at home, and that was a good win. And then you go on the road and lose to Oregon. It got me thinking, is this a home versus away issue? BYU, again, who, as it is already, they don't play too many Power 5 teams a year yet. When they move to the Big 12, they will. But as of right now, they don't play too many Big 12 teams. And last year, my point was for whether it was BYU, Houston, or whoever, in terms of a non-Power 5 team, you're just not going to have many Power 5 teams on your schedule. That's just, it's not. And, again, whether you want to blame that on the program itself, we can get into that another time. But just the fact of the matter is they just don't play those Power 5 teams all that often, just due to the dynamic of how the conferences are worked out and how scheduling is worked out in college football. So there's that. And it got me thinking, okay, when you play those teams a few times a year, sure, it's easy to, no, I don't want to say easy, but it is easier, I guess I could say, to beat up on cupcake teams all year long, as I said last year. And then, you have one big game in your schedule, you rally around and you say, all right, we got to win this game. You go out and you play well. It's tougher to have to do that every week. And for the most part, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF haven't had that task yet. Are they going to have that task when they get to the Big 12? Maybe, maybe not. Big 12, maybe not that great of a conference anyway. So then I wondered, okay, is this a home versus away issue, as I mentioned? Honestly, the data was better than I thought. And I wanted to keep it pretty recent, so I did since 2018. Power 5. Power 5 teams, whether they were top 25 or not. Away, when they play Power 5 teams away since 2018, half the games. All right. So you lost this time around. Overall, you're still doing okay. At home, you're 5-3. And yeah, one game above 500. They lose one of them, and they're 4-4. So there's not too much of a difference there between home versus away. So it wasn't that. It's just you win some, you lose some. So like this year, speaking, you beat Baylor, you lost to Oregon. You can't win them all, which is fair. Now taking a look at those top 25 Power 5 teams since 2018, 1-3 on the road against those teams, 4-2 at home. So they have played top 25 Power 5 teams better at home than they have on the road. That's a fact. Doesn't mean that BYU is not good. No, I mean, they're still a top 25 team. They're still good. But the argument that BYU is going to be some elite program once they make the jump to the Big 12 is just, it is not based on any fact. It's not based on anything other than opinion and the fact that these fans just want their team to do well. And I have no problem with that. Of course, if I was a fan of a team, I would want them to do well as well. There's nothing wrong with that. It's being confident in your team, but being confident in your team that you're going out and you're saying, they're going to be dominant, they're going to be elite, they're going to be, they're going to be the Alabama of the Big 12 immediately, right away, is kind of foolish. Not even kind of, it is foolish. And again, this is against top 25 teams and against Power 5 teams when they're not playing them consistently. So maybe that's part of the issue. Either way, you can make an argument. And everybody, at this point, if you've been following along with me on this topic, you know my stance on this. I don't think that these 4 teams are going to dominate immediately once they get into the Big 12. Which is also taking into consideration the Big 12 is not a good conference for football as it is already. This year may be better than last year for them. Oklahoma is looking good, Texas is looking good, but that's not going to matter once these 4 teams come into play. Iowa State looking decent, Kansas decent. Who else is out there? Oklahoma State I think is looking pretty solid. But other than that, TCU, Texas Tech, I don't know. I'm unsure on them yet. West Virginia, you can put 2 thumbs down on them for that. Kansas State, no, I don't like that. Okay, Baylor, all right, you beat Baylor. Congratulations. And again, this is another one of those things where it's like, okay, the data doesn't really say too much because this is kind of a different context than it is for if you were a part of that conference and you were a Power 5 team. So it's good for them that they have been able to beat Power 5 teams on a somewhat, I don't want to say consistent basis, but on a somewhat equal and level, I don't know what the word is, but they're not being dominated and they're not dominating. It's very even and leveled. However, back to the argument that they're going to be elite right away. Any team, Power 5 or not, whether it's BYU, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Pitt, West Virginia, Maryland, SMU, Rutgers, Temple, Clemson, anybody trying to make an argument that they're a top 10 team or an elite team or anything, if they're trying to convince the College Football Playoff Committee, fans, media, that they are top 10 or that they are good or elite or any of those or any of that, or even a College Football Playoff contending team, if you want to make that argument and you want to convince everybody that you are serious and that you can be a College Football Playoff team, you have to play well on the road just as well as you do at home. BYU does, not against top 25 Power 5 teams right now. They do against any Power 5 team. Again, there are bad Power 5 teams. That's my point. Just because you're Power 5 doesn't mean you're good. Just because these 4 teams are going to be Power 5 does not mean they're going to be elite right away. BYU, in that spot against Oregon, you have to win that game if you are going to be taken seriously by anyone. If you win that game against Oregon on the road, all of a sudden you're 3-0. You've beat not 1 but 2 top 25 Power 5 teams, and all of a sudden you're making me look like a real idiot and anybody else who was doubting them. And you're making other people say, hey, this BYU group is not bad. They're good, right? They could make some noise, and they could be on that similar level that Notre Dame has been over the past 5 years, where sure they didn't belong to a conference, and maybe they didn't play too many good teams, but they were still good enough to make the playoff. BYU would enter that conversation if they beat Oregon. Fact of the matter is they didn't, and for a team like BYU right now, you're going to have to be very similar to Notre Dame in previous years where you had to be undefeated, 1 loss is you can only have one loss and still be a serious contender, if anything. Sorry, I hate to break it to you, but for BYU, that's a game you have to win if you're going to try to make that argument that you're some elite team. Now, over the course of program history, BYU football's been good. I can't argue that. They have been good. But they're not... There's a difference between being good and being elite. A huge difference. Elite teams win consistently, and they're not fazed by different teams, different stadiums, different places, on the road or home, neutral site, whatever. They consistently win, and they are expected to consistently win no matter what. This loss to Oregon is just a continuing theme for BYU, and past 5 years, sure, BYU's done better against Power 5, but that means nothing, but not in the way that BYU fans want it to mean nothing. BYU fans want it to mean nothing in terms of, it doesn't mean anything because once we get to the Big 12, it's a whole different ballgame. And all that won't matter because now we're a part of that group and our preparation and everything will get better, and now we'll be more used to playing them and we'll be better. And that might be right. But this data means nothing in terms of I can't look at this and say, and I can't throw it out and say, they're going to just start over and they're going to build this elite program once they join the Big 12. Because, and people have said this to me before, and I agree with them, just because you're a Power 5 team doesn't mean you're good. I mean, look at college football-wise, look at teams like West Virginia in the past, looking at college football over the past 10, 15 years. West Virginia, Kansas, Boston College, Rutgers, Georgia Tech, Florida State in recent years. They're Power 5, but they're not good. So just because you have had success in the past and now you're going to be Power 5 does not mean you're going to just all of a sudden be elite and be this unstoppable force. It's foolish. And I'm not saying that they're going to be awful, because they're most likely they're not going to be awful. But they're not going to be the next Alabama or the next, they're just not. Right, and if they are, it's going to take quite some time for them to reach that level. They're not just going to come in and immediately do that. It's impossible.